see. He's a spiritual master. He's a HH Romapada Swami Maharaja. He has been practicing the Bhakti Yoga for almost like 50 years. We are all part of ISKCON International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Maharaj is going to throw some light on spiritual knowledge. Thank you.
Are you all regulars with this club? Yeah? Any new people here? No. Welcome. Okay. Sorry to be late, but we got stuck in traffic. One of those things. The lights go down so it'll be easier to see the screen. That's good. A little background, my interest, even more so my knowledge of this subject, kind of happened randomly. Somebody forwarded to me a National Public Radio interview with a professor from San Diego State whose field is narcissism in modern society. And I found it very interesting. Largely she was speaking about millennials, and that's most of you here. And the degree that it's there. There's a little audio clip, a video, the audio clip of her, so you get to meet her, at least by picture and by sound. Then once I started finding out about the topic and the prominence of it, that people that study these things, sociologists that study these things, find there's an abundant amount of research and comments on narcissism in modern society. So that was the launching point. I love me. The term narcissism comes from Greek mythology. In Greek mythology there was a young man named Narcissus, and Narcissus was extremely beautiful in feature, and he abhorred this lake, and he was enamored with his own beauty, seeing his beauty in the lake, and he couldn't draw himself away from his own beauty in the lake, and he died, just staring at himself in the lake. So narcissism comes from that. He stared at his reflection in the lake until he died. A fixation with oneself and one's physical appearance. Nothing wrong with having a degree of self-confidence or self-esteem, but when it becomes obsessive, that's narcissism. Little picture, just to frame the topic in our modern times. Today's emotional landscape doesn't look very healthy. Some statistics, just in the United States, 16 million persons per year suffer major depression episode. This is just in the year 2012. 5% of the world population has severe depression. Half of the marriages in the United States end in divorce. Suicide rates rose 24% in just a period of 15 years. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental illness in the United States. There's a friend who's a medical professor at, what's the medical school and the hospital that's in Baltimore, real big one? Yeah. So that's where he's based. And he was sharing with me that it's the fastest growing industry within the medical field of anything is anxiety disorders. And pharmaceutical companies coming up with products, and as medical doctors they get the latest and the latest and latest like samples to try it out with your patients and with all their publicity. It's huge. Growing. 40 million adults in the United States ages 18 and older. 40 million adults. So it leads to the question, if so many advances in so many ways, why are people more depressed and more unhappy than ever before? I have to, maybe I have another laser pointer. That's what I'll do. Whoops. The chart on the left is mainly showing groups of people, American population primarily, where their groupings are based on batteries pooped out too. Major events. So millennials are here. So 1982 to year 2000 is when they were born, the year of birth. So here's baby boomers up here, folks like myself, and millennials are here. Defining moments. Y2K, 9/11 attacks, school shootings, social media. Now there's a new group, the iGen, Great Recession, terrorism, technology. So Gene Twenge speaks about these. But the message, as you see, when there's major changes in culture, then there's generational change. So here's some examples. The mechanization period, going back earlier in this chart, where things were done by hand, they start to be done by machine, like making things in the kitchen that's done by machine instead of by hand, as an example. And then the present time, things are done in another way through technology and computerization. I just saw an article, I didn't even know it. Bill Gates had a partner that started Microsoft. And this partner of his just donated $125 million to add to artificial intelligence research something that showed emotion in robots. Oh, anyway, technology is moving. There was a period of time when that which bound families together was families having meals together, sitting around together at least, a couple times a day. And eating habits have changed in modern times. And so there's de-emphasis on the family unit and more emphasis on entertainment and other habits. There was a period of time when celebrities and photographs of celebrities was the thing, and now it's selfies. Last 2 times I've been to India, there's all over the country, there's big ad about the latest cell phone, and it's all about which makes the best selfie. That's what sells. That's what people are interested in. Me. One of the characteristics of this narcissism or emphasis upon self is rugged individualism, standing out from the crowd, being somehow me. The things that I've read about tattoos, this is me. And different ways of expressing oneself in strong individual manner. And less emphasis on social norms, more emphasis on me. And something that goes along with that is how you see yourself matters more than who you really are. There's this expression, the store window is full of things and the store is empty. You can achieve anything, follow your dreams, believe in yourself, don't give up. Titles of books. I can, I will, end of story. Love yourself before you love others. There's just one slide of many from Google Books. They have a way of researching where phrases appear in literature today. And these phrases, over the last century, have grown immensely. So here's, you are special. This is from 1900. Flat, no mention at all. And then slowly increasing. This is a 20% increase. 0.0. Believe in yourself, love yourself. Hardly was it a phrase before. Now it's very strong. And many other such indicators. So if it's in literature, it's that those are what people are talking about, thinking about in the culture. Some say that this narcissism has become an epidemic. And dictionary definition is affecting or tending to affect a disproportionately large number of individuals within a population, community, or region, all at the same time. Epidemic. They even have a narcissistic personality inventory in college students. Probably there aren't any here. There's doing something else. I love me, myself, and I, and our presidential candidates certainly indicated that favoritism in that direction. They even have this narcissistic personality inventory people they've rated our presidents. Most narcissistic is Lyndon Johnson. I think they're going to have to make a new chart after our present president. And images that just reflect abundant affection for self and self-image. Instead of saying, something about nature or good morning, handsome. You get the idea. Pervasive. Emphasis on self-image. the classic narcissist has an inflated sense of self, and that sense of self is rooted in their fame, their power, their attention, money, how they view themselves. I find that's cute. Look what he's holding in his hand, but he thinks he's a king. So, and with that sense of self-value is a sense of entitlement, and that means behaving with others in a way that's hurtful and disrespectful, but it doesn't matter because somebody's very powerful. And a big issue, you'll hear it repeated several times, and this is parenting, where parents transmit this to their dependents. At least is that the narcissist tendency. Focus on oneself and becoming the greatest and so forth. Now here's, I have to do a little sound check. That's Gene Twenge. This is a little audio clip from this. It was a 25-minute NPR interview. And that's how they titled it, Me, Me, Me. Let's see how we do with volume.
Gene Twenge, you've painted a disturbing picture about rising levels of narcissism, personal ambition, and individualism. What happens when people's sky-high impressions of themselves and their expectations, their self-image, what happens when all these things collide with reality?
Well, it can be a difficult picture. So, just for a little background first, we know from these surveys of high school students, for example, that twice as many expect to get, for example, a graduate and professional degree compared to boomers in the 70s. Yet the same number of people will actually get those degrees. So expectations have grown and reality has stayed about the same. So at some point, these expectations collide with reality. And that can potentially lead to unhappiness, and it can potentially lead to anxiety and depression and other mental health issues.
So you're finding something actually quite profoundly sad here, which is it's not just that this culture of individualism is not necessarily helping us when it comes to achievement, but it might actually be counterproductive when it comes to our mental health and our happiness.
Yeah, so, you know, the happiness picture was especially interesting because adolescents are actually happier. So they have the happy individualism and optimism compared to those, say, in the 90s. But then they hit this wall sometime in their mid-20s to 30, when then in recent times happiness is lower. Then there's the bigger issue of anxiety and depression, and we see more of those issues coming up as well. And even at younger ages, you know, high school students now are more likely to say they have trouble sleeping, that they have trouble concentrating, and these are psychosomatic symptoms of depression.
So there's a real irony here, isn't it? Which is that the generation that has been taught you are special and can make a difference is reaching the conclusion that they are not special and they can't make a difference, and that must be very, very painful.
I think so. And I think when you talk to millennials, you can really see this disillusionment and anger that they feel. I think rightly so, that they were set up with this very buoyant view of what their future was going to be, and this was true even before the Great Recession hit, that they ended up disappointed by what they found when they got to adulthood, and then the economic picture changed for the worse, and it became an even more difficult transition to adulthood.
Depression, drug overdose, death from drug overdose, and these are psychosomatic symptoms of what this is all about. So it's not just, you know, it's sad. What are some of the causes? These people that study this, they consistently point to parenting, where parents have transmitted to their dependents, you're special, you can achieve anything, just do it. And participation trophies. I visited homes, I travel a lot, and sometimes it's like a prayer room or something. The whole room is filled with what their child got as for participating in something, or award for something, and just being on a team or a group. The intentions of those parents are to encourage their children, but the intention doesn't always produce a good result. A term that I've heard come up a number of times since I started looking into this is helicopter parents. And they're there with good intention, that everything that their child needs, they're going to supply it. But the child doesn't get so much. Such parents don't give the child the opportunity for experimenting, learning just on their own in a more normal fashion. Technology. I don't know if you're familiar with this term, dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is in the registers within the brain that rewards or pleasure are stimulated. So, for example, dopamine is released in high quantities when one smokes or drinks or gambles. It promotes addiction. People that have addiction, there's a high amount of dopamine in their system, and they have found that when you get a text or a like on your Facebook, dopamine spikes, and so people become addicted to their cell phones or their devices, and sometimes 2 or 3 at the same time, and moving back and forth. And technology has helped to promote narcissism. People are inseparable from that little facility. The values within society, of course, we're shaped to some degree by the society and cultural norms in which we grow. Numbers are more important than people. Success is imperative at any cost. So people's well-being is expendable as long as you get the result, get the power, get the accomplishment. A big feature is not who you are, but how you portray yourself. I mean, coaching for job interviews and other things like that. Not the character of the individual. Of course, there's exceptions to all of this. This is speaking about tendencies. Something I like, I've never been interviewed by Google, but the way that Google decides who they want to hire is not so much the resume, which school you graduated from, what your GPA, what your scores were, but they present you with a scenario of something in real life that Google might do, and then ask you, here's some obstacles, here's some potential, what would you do? It's practical, and thinking creatively, using whatever it is that you do know, and how you're going to go from where you are to where you want to get to. That's more who you are than how you portray yourself. Create differentiation by self-promotion and deprecation of others. I mean, I hear this all the time from people that in their professional workplace, what they were studying in school and what they experience in the workplace is, there's a big gap in the reality. And because this is a big part of what happens in the corporate sector, very unpleasant. So, is narcissism something that's real, that we can become anything we want to become? There are cultural things in society that seem to promote it, and the media promotes it, and certainly there's some success stories, but there's more failures than there's success stories. So it's not, the dream isn't a reality. Fame, power, money, grab it and it's yours. Another interesting point is there's risks. That is, if somebody thinks I'm so special, then I really don't have to make a big effort. And conversely, if one doesn't have that inflated sense of self, they're going to apply themselves more diligently. Harboring inflated self-esteem without accomplishing or putting effort to genuinely build self-merit may dissuade one from actually achieving. There's another audio and the video clip that speaks on this point. Saying it better than I'm saying it here. There's study, self-evaluation amongst Asian Americans, and 93% of Asian Americans describe themselves as hardworking. And they're hardworking because they need to be hardworking. It's part of their culture, part of their ethic. Whereas the general population, much less so. And the result is Asian Americans' annual household income is significantly greater than those that think that they don't need to really apply themselves because they're already great. And in higher education, both bachelor and graduate school, this is an interesting chart. 70%, 53% Korean, and US 28% of the population go on for higher education. Interesting. That's the group that has the greatest sense of self-worth and self-esteem, that apply themselves less. Appearance, these are symptoms of narcissism. Appearance obsession. In the age group of people under 30, there's a 64% spike in cosmetic surgery in 1 year. It's not just America. I traveled in China and I met somebody, a millennial. Her mission in life was to get enough money so she could have facial surgery, facial cosmetic surgery. She didn't like her appearance. That was it. That was her mission. Extreme ways of defining one's individuality. It's a little more subtle, but extended adolescence. Large increase in young people after they finish their education. Doubled since the 1970s, where they stay at home and sorting out what they're going to do with their life, and of course a strong influence on materialism, from materialism upon an individual growing up. cultural trends or societal trends that are reflecting this is reality TV. It's a new phenomena from when I was the baby boomer era. Social media, and in general society feeds narcissism. Extreme birthday parties costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. I was invited to attend one of these things. I really felt out of place. It was with a good intention that a family, their daughter just turned 16, there was a surprise birthday, and there was this big expenditure and a big hall and a big sound system and very expensive. Or baby celebrations. I'm so old. Paparazzi. You probably all know what this one is, but I had to learn what it is. It's where there are photographers that follow around celebrities to take sneak photographs of celebrities and then show the special photographs of celebrities. So parents hire such people to show that their kids are celebrities. And they take pictures of their kids and post them in different social media. So here's a Simon Sinek. I've grown to appreciate this person. The first time I was introduced to him by name was, again, somebody forwarded to me a TED talk that he gave. You're nodding. You've heard this name before? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's called the Golden Circle. Of course, there's different golden circles, but his message was what made Martin Luther King great, or somebody that made computers. So many computer companies are ordinary, but what made Apple great was there was a very strong why behind what the person who became great did, and then that drove what they did and how they did what they did. Interesting, you can look it up later. He's now speaking about millennials in the workplace, and I think this is relevant to all of you. Let's see how we're doing with the sound level. Interesting fellow. A lot of insight into, obviously, to me, obviously he's a caring person, and he's a deep thinking person, and put those two together and you look at the topic that we're discussing, millennials, and specifically, the tendency for narcissism, and it has some unpleasant features amidst the promise of success and joy and so forth. On a personal level, this is now like a little summary. There's psychological health, where there's increase in depression, trouble sleeping, suicidal tendencies, particularly even drug overdose, accidental drug overdose, suicides, loneliness, anger issues. Strong. Physical health, a stress hormone cortisol with all of this increases heart problems, high blood pressure problems. These are increasing. Shallow relationships, because the relationship isn't the essential thing. Both lack of commitment, that's this one down here, and prone to aggression in relationships. There are broad societal effects in the workplace, difficulty because of the narcissist person at the top, challenges amongst the workers, a weakening of the sense of community, even going to the extremes where this Omaha, Nebraska mall shooting was done by a young person who did it because it would just draw attention to him. Problems. You see, all those little things at the bottom, those are the studies that show what all the attention that's gone into this situation. So now that's the problem, what to do with it. Some suggestions start right away, once again, with this issue about parenting. First is to recognize it's an influence that's out there. I was at one university, this wasn't the topic, it was just something about karma and reincarnation or something very straightforward. And at the end of the program, some student came up and started crying. And you know what it's like to be a millennial. It's so difficult. I don't have time to do my studies. I don't have time to do my yoga. I'm so busy with my Facebook and answering email. And I don't have time for my life. And I can't even eat properly. I can't sleep properly. And, you know, that helped spur my interest in learning more. You know, I didn't really understand the force, the pressure that she was feeling. Maybe that was extreme, but maybe not. He's in a broad stroke. So experts emphasize redoing parenting in a different way rather than you're special. Just what children need is the affection and love of their parent. And emphasis on teaching values, not just, you know, scores and behavior and winning and achieving. There's a few people here from India, yeah, so I'll mention this one. Some years ago, maybe 8 or 9 years ago, there was a national conference of educators in India to take a look at how well are we doing in our education in India. And the keynote speaker, his message was that education in India today can be summarized in 5 words. Information, 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 no transformation. We're failing because abundant in information transfer, but insufficient in terms of changing up people's hearts or transforming, developing these things. Gratitude, humility, giving respect to others, and so forth. It starts in the home, it starts with parents and the close relationships, but it's also an education principle. And something, whoop. When the power comes back on, it's going to take a while. I have something to say anyway. Mentoring of young people by other young people, or by somebody that's not even just the parents, but somebody that's close to the individual, to help transmit those values. I came across a study, actually somebody sent it to me, an educator, and something that helps teenagers go through the transition, the turbulent transition of teenage years, is having someone that's not the mother and father, that makes themselves available just because they care about young people, and help them listen like an elder friend kind of person, and hear them out, and help them see exactly what this is saying. This was an education article. help them see how to place value in the way that you live your life. You like what's inside rather than what's outside. Find confidence and meaning and purpose in who you are, not just how other people view you. Big for a teenager. And then they can be more effective in their academic work and everything else that they are attempting to do. Advice is balanced use of technology. This again has to do with the dopamine thing. Technology has its benefits, and excesses have its detriments. So a balanced use of technology so that you can be present with people instead of be absent with people. One of the things that irritates me, just like gets under my skin, is a very common phenomenon of seeing two people or three people or four people walking along together, and they're all doing something, they're texting something or talking to somebody having nothing to do with one another, although they're their friends. And it's so common. Just being absent instead of being present in relationships. It's all connecting to people in some other way. So, be present with people and minimize, or let's say balance effectively, use of technology. Emphasizing people in the work environment, students, or when you're doing research or whatever it is, certainly when you get in the professional field. Those are all things that can be done, but will the results be permanent or just cover up a deeper tendency? Where does this tendency come from? The root of narcissism is there's a need, something that everybody has, a need to love and be loved. And if that isn't met, then one is going to turn again to something else to fill that hole that's inside. Here's a classic example. There's the narcissist on the left side. She's a bright woman and doesn't mind doing whatever she needs to do to get to the top. And then there's this other fellow that's a product of the narcissist generation that feels unworthy of love and feels deeply flawed and feels depressed. Both have a need to love and be loved. So that has to be dealt with. Now, good parenting certainly is the beginning of that feeling loved, and then in turn reciprocating with love. But there's yet a deeper issue, and that's the question who we really are. Now this is where Bhagavad Gita's message comes into play, or a spiritual message comes into play. The nature of the self is asking this deep question, who am I? And there are different ways of looking at who we think we might be. Some general categories is thinking that I'm the mind. But being a little detached from that idea, there are disciplines that can teach one you're not the thought. You just observe and you're not the thought. For some time, as a college student, a few years ago, I spent some time each day doing Zazen. And one of the practices of Zazen, the goal is to empty the mind. And one of the ways of emptying the mind is detachment from the thoughts in the mind. So as the thoughts appear, it's like clouds that come into your view. Some pass more quickly than others. But you don't interact with the thought, you just watch it come, do its thing, and then it's gone. And it's gone. and then comes another one. And so the observer is different than the thought. And then with the thought comes then emotions connected with the thought. So who I am is the observer, not the thought or the emotion connected with the thought. The thoughts are just passing phases of time. Emotions, similarly. Emotions are felt within the body, but the emotions also come and they go. So if I'm not my mind and not my emotions, maybe I'm my body. So that's a very common conception. Yet the body, is, we know, is also always changing. The body that we had when we were little is gone, and now we have another body. Biologically, every cell in the body changes every 7 years. So if somebody in the room is 21, you've had 3 different bodies working on number 4. But we're still around. So if we're not the mind, and we're not the emotions, and not the body, what's left? Who are we? We're the observer of all those things, and the observer is the conscious self. So it helps to know who you are. And then act from you can engage your thinking process, your emotions, and your body in different activities. But it's very helpful to understand who you are, the conscious source of energy that's within the body. When that conscious self departs the body, life is gone. So that life is us. The Bhagavad Gita, that's the basis of the yoga system. It teaches the yoga system. Provides ways through the yoga system to understand, not only notionally, but in practical terms, our true identity. And when that true identity is missing, if we're forgetful, then it invites this narcissism to take over. To overvalue ourselves and feel some kind of pride. The emptiness of the store when the store window is full. Our true identity is we're tiny parts of the complete whole. That's who we are. And that complete whole, according to the message of Bhagavad Gita, that's Krishna. Being separated from our source, there are feelings, emotions of fear and insecurity, and things that we have, they're all going to be taken from us, for sure. So it invites fear. In the lack of self-knowledge, it invites narcissism. I'm saying this is an antidote. Understand who you are, and it takes care of the problem. This is an image of an apple and the reflection of an apple in the mirror. So, in the reflection of the apple, it looks like an apple, but there's no substance in the reflection in the mirror. The substance is over here. So, if our life is spent at the reflection of who we really are without understanding who we really are, we're in illusion, in Maya, the Sanskrit terminology. And there's the sense of fulfillment and self-satisfaction is missing. But here's the last slide. This is a message from Bhagavad Gita that says the same thing. Chapter 5. One whose happiness is within, who is active and rejoices within, and whose aim is inward, is actually the perfect mystic. He is liberated in the Supreme, and ultimately he attains the Supreme. And from the commentary, unless one is able to relish happiness from within, how can one retire from the external engagements meant for deriving superficial happiness? A liberated person enjoys happiness by factual experience. He can therefore sit silently at any place and enjoy the activities of life from within. Such a liberated person no longer desires external, material happiness. So that's a Bhagavad Gita picture on the answer to narcissism, or trying to fill a hole that's inside. Fill the hole with self-knowledge and self-appreciation. That's what Bhagavad Gita is teaching. And the last slide is, I learned these things starting from my college days from my spiritual master, who I met for the first time. He visited our campus with Allen Ginsberg. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know Bhagavad Gita. I knew nothing about nothing. I was just passing through the student union. This is the student union. And I saw a big crowd of people outside the Millen Fillmore room. And, what's all this about? So I just wiggled my way through the crowd of people at the door, went inside, and there was Prabhupada having kirtan, chanting the Hare Krishna mantra with Allen Ginsberg. And Allen Ginsberg was playing his bongo drums, and Prabhupada was playing kartals, just singing a simple melody so that everyone could sing along. And my life changed just from that sound vibration of the Maha Mantra. At the end, some very short talk, because the students were pretty intoxicated and couldn't retain anything, so he just spoke very simply and invited people to come and visit the center, because there was a center at the university where I was attending. And from that, a life of transformation. Little by little. I got a Bhagavad Gita and started reading, started chanting. So it isn't always going to look like this, but the inside, the transformation of consciousness inside, so that one has a sense of fulfillment and higher purpose to whatever one does in life, whatever the gifts that you've been endowed with, how to use them in a way that's going to be very meaningful for yourself and for others. That's it. Any comments or discussion? Yes.
Well, I guess like that last verse that you just talked about.
Yeah.
One thing that I identify with about that is that, how nice would it be to not have to depend on outward things to make you happy, because they can go at any moment. So it'd be nice if you can just always be happy from inside, so you don't have to have things from the outside that you depend on to make yourself happy.
That's natural. The other is a diseased condition. It doesn't mean we're oblivious to and I don't care about, but happiness is dependent upon those things. So then when you extend consciousness, here's something I like. The soul is both conscious and consciousness. What does that mean? Just like a lamp is luminous and illuminates things. So we're a soul, we're conscious. And consciousness extends into things outside. Using Vedic language, pots and plates, stuff. And how do we relate to that stuff? Well, just we can see it as it is, and from the Vedic picture, see it as an emanation from the source of those pots and plates and those things. Nature, trees, the air, sky, mountains, people, forms of life. They're emanations from the Supreme, and see them that way. Happiness isn't depending upon what's the configuration today. Happiness is already there. Now how can I be of service to these creatures that have, or entities that have come from the source? For the pleasure of the source. So it's a different picture. But you have freedom to think in that way if that happiness is already within, because that's a need. You want to be happy. And if you're happy, then you have the freedom to live that way. It's liberating. And then you can strive to become, a fantastic something or other. But it's not for the purpose of filling a need. It's for the purpose of service. Meaningful service. Anything else? Yes.
One question, Maharaj, is that sometimes parents are good and they try to give education or whatever to the child.
This one?
Yeah. But we have seen that parents are good, but still kids go in a different directions. Many times, what can be done?
Well, parenting is a big topic, and there's free will. You invite a soul into the family system, and they have free will like you do. And they're going to make choices even they're little. So as parents, you can just create an atmosphere that's conducive for, it's like being a gardener. You buy a bunch of seeds and you plant the seeds. You don't know what's going to come out from the soil. You have an idea, because this one says this is marigolds and that one's potatoes. And so you have, at least the species is predictable. But whether it's going to be a big potato or a skinny potato, you don't know. So, but you create an atmosphere that's going to be a wholesome potato, or a wholesome marigold, or a wholesome child. That's parenting. That's your responsibility. You create an atmosphere in the home that's conducive for a healthy, wholesome, living entity who's going to make choices. And if the parenting is done where the child knows they have the freedom to make choices, and there's a relationship of love, love is going to tend the choices to be made in the direction that's reciprocating of that love, because they feel love. And that's more strong than parenting that's forcing. Because when the parenting that's forcing is gone, and now the child has grown up and an adult, they don't have that supervision anymore, and they're not guided by the compass of the affection of their parents. They're guided by whatever they want to do. But love is more powerful than force. It's a challenge. And then many parents, they wanted a second child if the first one wasn't complicated enough. And then more. It's a big responsibility to do properly. It's a big responsibility. It's easier to produce children. It's a whole other thing to raise a child. Responsibly. Anything else? You have another one?
Yeah.
Sure.
This was regarding the, you said less use of technology, or like how things or these devices bind you.
Yeah.
Through the hormones, or maybe because of the devices we get hormones.
Yeah.
So how do we...
Dopamine.
So how do you disassociate yourself with this?
Responsible. Some self-restraint. It's useful. And so it's like anything in life. You don't eat gluttonously, you eat according to necessity. And you just, draw the line. Not, till I can't eat anymore. That's not healthy. You eat, and recreation, and, so you portion things in a regulated fashion. That's a life in goodness. So if one's life is conducted by the mode of goodness, then it's easy. And if it's conducted by passion or ignorance, it's a thought only. It doesn't happen. It becomes, toxic. Anything. And technology is very powerful. Very powerful. Powerful how it controls our lives more than we can imagine. Yes?
Sainik was talking about being normal
Being normal.
as opposed to inflated self
Okay.
in just day-to-day dealings also.
Yeah.
But why is that?
Why?
Like why is that being treated, being normal, as a kind of low self-esteem nowadays?
Well, depends on who you are and the way that you're brought up. But for people that are brought up over and over and over, you're special, and there's somebody that doesn't have that sense of you're special, it's a cultural thing. It's not a absolute standard thing. It's a cultural thing. When you get to okay. Yes.
So you mentioned that people spend so much money behind birthday parties or like to show others.
Yes.
So we ourselves in our life do so many things just to show others like that we are happy or that that I'm rich or something like that. Even like in India we spend so much money on weddings.
Yes. Whoa.
So
Big.
what's the solution for this? Like how can we avoid all this? Like how we in everyday life we do so many things just for other people. Like how will people see me? What will people think about me? What can we do to avoid this?
Well, a little light has to go on. It says, what's really important? Now, supposing, your parents wish for you to have one of those splurge weddings, because for whatever the reasons, without listing the reasons, social, and we love you, and that's our way of showing we love you, and all the other things, culturally, and that's what you do, because that's what you do, that's what you do. So what are you going to do if that's what they want to do? At least internally, the little light's on that says, what's really important? It's easy to get carried away and just like, hey, this is my opportunity. So you don't want to disturb your mother and father if that's what they want to do. Because then their social circle that they move in, they'll be looked down upon because they didn't do it. Because they didn't do it because you didn't want them to do it, because that's not what's really important to you. So anyway, if your light's on, if you're conscious of, then you can try in your own way through your communication with parents and the people and whoever, your life, the impact of people. If the more the light is on, the more you'll be able to communicate that effectively. It doesn't even have to be verbally. Just something that you carry, how you carry yourself. They'll understand. Some people will understand. She's a little different. And then they'll ask you, questions. Like, you're always smiling and you're always very calm and like, what's up? Then you get a chance to say. If you be that other value, recognize and grow it, cultivate it inwardly. That's this next message. That's attractive because people don't have that inner contentment. They're trying to fill it with something else. They'll come. You can go out of your way and speak it. Even better, be it, and then people will ask you, and then you can say. But when you say, if it's coming from the place of it's really there, not just a notion that you have some conviction in, it's somewhere out there, distant from me, grow it. Then your wedding can be whatever it's going to be. And your life is something else. But it doesn't stop with weddings. It's what comes after weddings. You know, what's your career going to look like, and what's the level of income, and how big is your house, and yada, yada, yada. It just keeps going. But that, you know, you have to be clear of who you are and start making choices that match who you are and grow who you know, that value that it's in, you know, it's in Bhagavad Gita. And people that know how to live according to that message, even today. It can take different shapes, depending upon different natures. That's the yoga system, inward cultivation of higher consciousness. We done? We're done. Thank you all very much for coming.
Oh, I had one last thing.
Oh, you have something. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Hi Krishna Maharaj. So my question is like about liberation when the soul feels in a liberated state. Like how to be in that state, because as long as the soul has duties to perform, they have obligations.
No problem. You can be liberated and do duties. Are you saying, is your question, as long as I have obligations and duties in this world, I'm still not liberated?
Yeah.
That's what your thought is?
Yeah.
Why? Why? If I have, there's senses and there's objects of the senses. This is now Bhagavad Gita language. And just take bhakti. Bhakti, you're familiar. Bhakti comes from the Sanskrit word bhaj, different than the English word. B-H-A-J. Bhaj means practical activity. So there's senses, there's objects of the senses, and in the practical, I extend my senses into the field of objects. Why? Because there's some duty to be performed. It's coming out of a higher sense, a value, that there's a duty, not, you know, a debt, and I have to pay my debt to my mother and to my society and to my teachers and stuff. But you know, a bond of affection and love, and let me engage those activities that I do in the world with a higher sense. This is now in the sense of yoga, so that my consciousness, remember this, conscious and consciousness, can link with the Supreme. Because that's what yoga is. Yoga is a Sanskrit word that means linking with the Supreme. So, I can engage in my duties and link with the Supreme. I'll give myself as an example. I have a brother. My mother and father are now departed. I have an older brother. And my older brother just reported to me that he is diagnosed with Parkinson's, the early stages of Parkinson's. We're having this discussion with him. So he's attached to me, not attached to Krishna. He's attached to me. I'm his younger brother. So I know what his attachment is, and I have some affection for my brother, naturally. And my mission, it's a duty, my mission is to help him see me in relation to Krishna, which he does. He doesn't so much know Krishna, he just knows me. And he knows that I'm connected to Krishna. So I'm helping him in his life become more connected to Krishna. I have an older sister. She just had open heart surgery next after my brother. And so I helped her make some arrangement where the hospital that she was going to have that open heart surgery is, I had a friend who was a block and a half away, and she was able to stay at his house and before the surgery and recover after the surgery, so they hadn't to go, some far distant place. But she felt really cared for. She knows me. She doesn't know Krishna. This is an American family. But when I told my brother the place where she's staying is not just a friend, but he's a devotee, he said, oh, he's a devotee. And he doesn't know Krishna. He knows me. Get the idea? Then, depending upon your life and the circle that you move in, there's duties. That's not a problem. That's not an impediment. It's for whom are you doing that? Consciousness. It can be just the consciousness of the duty itself, or consciousness of the source of everything that has helped create the circumstance where now you have a duty. Like, here's parents. How were they able to become parents? God's gift. So now they have a duty to God, and they see it that way because that their consciousness is heading towards Krishna. So saying, whatever your life or any one of our lives is made up of, if that all-important element's not an optional element, if the consciousness goes towards the source of everything, okay, what's the source of everything? Well, that's something I need to know. But once that consciousness of the source of everything is awakened, I can live my life where duties aren't an obstacle, it's just an opportunity for service. Yeah?
Yeah.
This is, again, taking my life as an example. I'm a sannyasi. You know what that means, and so I'm in the renounced order of life, and here I am coming all the way to 2-hour drive with that terrible traffic to spend time with all of you. What's my duty? It's my duty as a sannyasi. Duty doesn't mean you're non-entities, you're just objects and you're part of a duty that I do and you don't mean anything to me. I came here because, although I don't know you all, it's part of my duty. And I love my duty. You're not a problem. You're part of my life. Although, many of you I haven't met before. Some of you I recognize from before, from other times I've been here. And then our circle of responsibilities and duties can grow or shrink or modify as our life changes. But one thing doesn't change. There's conscious and consciousness directed towards the source of everything. And then, we have our identity and our nature, and that defines our duties. Okay, we're going to end. Thank you all very much.